I turned over a bright metal shell that rippled when
She says human longing for mystery leads to a commonality of belief in immortality.
Dad's late or I'm early. Either way, I have time to scout the pens. Kim's
Redemption and claustrophobia, what artists understand. Not valuing the
I'm Constance Merritt, and I live in Lincoln, Nebraska, downtown. And I'm originally from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and I came here to attend the PhD program in creative writing at UNL, and I graduated in 1998, and I have remained here because I kind of like it. When I was looking for graduate programs, a lot of my choices were narrowed by trying to look for somewhere where you could do a PhD in creative writing, and the University of Nebraska-Lincoln was one of those. And I think I just looked at classes, and I had been sort of a Cather fan and interested in that, and also sort of fascinated by the whole Great Plains literature idea. And so that drew me here to Nebraska. I think the biggest influence that Nebraska and the Plains has had on my writing is that they sort of created this sort of analog for me to the sea, and so we have the idea of the prairie schooner, which is of course really a covered wagon, but there's the sea plains analogy, so that when I got here, finally I could read Virginia Woolf and sort of get into her, and I noticed that in my first book there's a lot of sea imagery. So I think I sort of responded to this sort of space in Nebraska, that kind of openness. And I can remember my first day here going and walking around downtown and sort of ending up, I think, kind of near the highway going out and sort of looking around and seeing all this space and thinking that I could understand, how the plain women would have gotten, kind of freaked out by all this space, because I had lived in Utah where there are mountains around you. And so I think the space has mostly sort of influenced me in some way. Well, here in Nebraska, I worked a lot with Hilda Raz, and that was, I think, formative in some ways. And then other writers, since I've been here, I've also read Lauren Isley, whose thinking I like a lot. And then I'm influenced a lot. I also finally, in graduate school, from the perspective of a writer, I was able to start reading the moderns and sort of getting things out of them, which I hadn't been able to do reading them sort of as a critic. And so Wallace Stevens has been very important to me. Eliot a little bit, Dickinson, Elizabeth Bishop. I think the first time that I became interested in writing was, perhaps there was a mandatory tall tale contest that we had to enter when I was in about 4th grade. And the teachers made it really terrible by making everyone practice reading their composition aloud, which I really hated a lot because I was very shy. But anyway, as it turned out, I won the grand prize for the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. And so I thought, I can do this. And so that was my first draw to writing. And then I sort of wrote off and on. From then on, and sort of took to it seriously probably, over 10 years ago, I guess, when I sort of found a mentor that was interested in form, and which was something that sort of freed me to write. With my writing, I don't really think that there's a particular audience. I think when you're writing, or for me, when I'm writing, you're kind of writing to some sort of ideal you or ideal reader. And I think as far as audience, you're trying to reach that part of all the people that you're reading to. But I think even though there's, however many, 50 people in your audience, there's still something that's going on that's basically between two people, between the speaker and the listener. So I think it's that kind of part of everybody that I'm hoping to reach. Well, when I would say that what I'm trying to tell them. I'm not sure what I'm trying to tell them, but I would like people, in some sense, I think a lot of the root of the problems in the world is that people tend not to, I don't know, love their lives in some way and sort of lack some sort of required tenderness for themselves and sort of recognition of the sort of fragility of the human condition. And I think that's the main thing I'm interested in. I think the best advice for the beginning reader, and this is probably what really helped me and made my writing life take off the most, is to read and to really sort of read voraciously and find out which poets speak specifically to you, so that you're sort of invested and sort of just hungry, always looking for, some new influence. And I think reading a wide variety of things, it gives you choices, so that, when you have a problem in a poem, suddenly you remember that someone broke a line, I don't know, in some specific way, and you can do that, or that someone did anything or used the word chartreuse and it really worked, and you say, oh, maybe I can use fuchsia, or I don't know, something like that. It opens your choices reading. I think my current project, which I think I'm going to read from in probably the second part of my reading tonight, is a project that's called Two Rooms, and it sort of tries to deal with the kind of splits and conflicts in the self, and tries to seek some sort of integration. And this work, in contrast to my first work, is it's freer in terms of form. I mean, I think it's still formal, but it's more relaxed, and there aren't any, well, maybe one. There aren't, except for this one, there aren't any sonnets in there, and there aren't villanelles and sestinas and on, blank verse. It's a lot looser formally, I think, a lot more relaxed. All right, tonight I'll be reading from my first book of poems, Prodigal for Touch, which was published in 2000, and it was the winner of the Vassar Miller Prize in Poetry in 1999. I think I'm going to just read pretty much sort of old favorites. They're poems that I both like to read, and I think that people like hearing read, and I'm going to read those kinds of things. The first section of the book, it begins with two overtures, one of which I will read, which is a very short poem. And then the first section sort of has to do with like relationships, and I'll probably read a few poems from there. The second section has persona poems, and I think I might read 2 or 3 poems from there. The third section deals with my childhood in Arkansas, and I don't think I'm reading anything from that. And the fourth section just has to do with, I don't know, writing and life and living on after everything that's come before. And I'll probably read maybe 1 or 2 poems from that. And then I'm going to read new poems.
Good evening. Welcome to the Jane Pope Geske Heritage Room of Nebraska Authors. My name is Christine Pappas, and I'd like to welcome you to the 126th reading in the John H. Ames reading series. The Heritage Room is a special collection dedicated to preserving and promoting works by and about Nebraska authors. Currently, we maintain a collection of over 11,000 volumes written by 3,000 published authors from Nebraska. In an effort to promote these authors, the Heritage Room, along with the Nebraska Literary Heritage Association, sponsors the John H. Ames reading series to bring the authors and audience together in a local setting. I welcome and encourage all of you to visit our collection during regular public service hours so you can experience the many treasures and resources the Heritage Room has to offer. Our guest for this evening is Constance Merritt, who was born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and attended the Arkansas School for the Blind in Little Rock. Her BA and master's degree are from the University of Utah. She currently holds a PhD in creative writing from UNL. She is at present pursuing a master's of fine arts in creative writing from Warren Wilson College in Swanoa, North Carolina. She is a recipient of 2 Pushcart Prize nominations and of an Academy of American Poets College Prize. Her first collection of poems, A Prodigal for Touch, won the Vassar Miller Prize in Poetry and was published this last year Vassar Miller Prize Judge Eleanor Wilner called her a poet to defeat categories, to oppose the tyranny of names, with a poetry that sets its own terms of encounter, tender and austere, formal and intimate at once. And these books are for sale in the back of the room after the reading through the Heritage Room gift shop. Lauren Isley, a poet who is actually one of Constance's influences, wrote in the poem, "Think that I spoke to you. Poetry is the art of the ephemeral," someone has said, and another, the art of the continually renewed and always at present. Please help me welcome Constance Merritt, who, in A Protocol for Touch, dwells in both the ephemeral and the present.
This could be interesting. The Mute Swan. White silence on the water pulls me in and under, and I know it is a lady. The impossibility of naming her desire has kept her white and beautiful, while she has kept our secrets. She holds them deep within the throat of her graceful neck, and it is hard to say whether, when she bows her head, she is praying to take voice or to go on, giving silence. It is also hard to say whether hers is the silence of before speaking or after, almost as hard as saying nothing.
Could we have you speak a little louder?
You bet.
Okay.
I got that.
Okay.
I'm intuitive. The next poem I'm going to read is titled After and sort of written after a painting by Georgia O'Keeffe, and it's called Black Iris. 1. So utterly open, indecently exposed, or exquisitely closed upon themselves, I bring fresh-cut flowers wrapped in paper. In the park, we talk of women. But it's not that simple. There are so many places between open and shut, and there's what we say without knowing. 2. Nobody sees a flower, really. We haven't time. I never remember to ask the color of her eyes. I am afraid she won't remember, won't be there, so I stop on the way and buy flowers. Shape, color, scent, and fill, there is no more than this, and she is pleased and embarrassed. 3. Be modest in what you show me. I already see so much. When she is very near, I close my eyes. I do not know the names of birds or flowers, but always say, someday I'll learn. 4. In a few days, she will throw these flowers out with juice bottles and the daily news. They will not remain like this painted flower, exacting more than is proper, more than admiration, which is inexpensive and abundant in the world. I want them to see it, whether they want to or not. I don't always know what I'm seeing or why. Sometimes I see a wound waiting for salt or healing, inviting cool interest or consuming love. And whether for comfort or shame, I want to clothe its nakedness in layers of soft petals. 5. I think of her neither as friend nor lover, and believe in truths as yet unsaid. She will say she feels unworthy of this poem, the way I feel in front of this painting or at her side. I want someone to know everything. The desire seems obscene, like the dark interior of this painted flower, pistils, stamens, anthers, all in view. I never wanted to be this close to anything. In my first collection of poems, there are a lot of fixed forms, sestinas, villanelles, sonnets, there's not a glossa, huzzles, I don't know, everything. And I'm going to read one of the 3 sestinas, and it's called Misery Kids on the Line. Shouldn't we have outgrown this desire long ago, to be cradled, rocked inside the intricate shallows of an ear, as if our voices held the essential part of us, and being heard the safest way of being held, tenuously, unarmed. Returned as from the dead, I find your arms at last waiting, nothing left to desire, and I would to cry the unself-conscious way a small child cries its hunger to be rocked, except within me lies a glaciered part, barbed words, debris that will not let you near. My mother cut off her first husband's ear before she held my dad with other arms, their king-size bed, her guns equally a part of what we must call love or strong desire. Could shots I never heard have really rocked me loose from childhood and explain the way I resist your pull but cannot move away? An angel, you are terrifying and irresistible. How effortlessly rocked wears down to being stoned and healing harms, which nonetheless does not erode desire to be less whole, which is to say, apart. Faces barely seen and never touched part me into many tiny braids. They weigh on my chest, tense, slacken, derail desire for ease and grace, you balanced in my ear. Here, as yet, no woman's voice disarms me, makes of me an undone thing, defrocked of all my skins and saving faces, rocked open by sure knowledge of departure. Bodies I sculpt in clay require no arms. Without hands they are complete, pure the way a starving girl grows pure, a voice, an ear, a touch that's free from touch, from need, desire. Stranded here, rocked shut, I hate the word desire, hate the way the language holds apart what strains to close, our arms and voices, ears.
Let's try and get this going just a little bit better.
Hey, maybe it needs to be turned on.
Now we got some.
Was I supposed to know that? The next maybe 3 or so poems that I'm going to read are, persona poems. The first has an epigraph from a book called Disease of the Soul about medieval lepers. And the epigraph is, during the ceremony of sequestration, the medieval leper knelt at an altar or stood at an open grave while the priest recited the ceremony for the burial of the dead. Separation. The shovel scrapes, slowly the good earth gives. I close my eyes and open my mouth wide to taste the dirt cascading over my head, one shovelful, then two. Be dead to the world, be reborn to God. Twice I struggled to be here, deep inside the earth, ached to share a sister's rest. The women touched me then, their arms at first like stone I'd struggled to break through, then giving way to long sweet grass as I, exhausted, let myself be lulled by voices, bathed by tears, a breast beneath my cheek as I nursed my own child. Oh God, I mustn't think. Someone has shoved a ladder down for me. They'll burn it, sure, henceforth I will wear gloves. The wood is rough, splinters sting my eyes. Splinters sting my hands, my eyes tear as I move up into light. My body is too present, too heavy, not light and ghostly as I had imagined. No magic then inside the priest's slow drone. The world is neither more beautiful nor more cruel, only I have been removed a little distance. I forbid you to enter the marketplace, mill, or fair without your leper's clothes, to touch anything you bargain for or buy until it's yours, to touch a well without your gloves, to walk in narrow lanes. I forbid you to touch children or give them anything. I forbid you to touch. The priest's lips are pale and thin, the ashen color of berries taken by early frost some merchants try to sell.
holding them lightly on your fingertips, stroking with thumb. You can feel the cold curled like a snake or a child. Some days I've sought such fruit. There will be those who'll beg to kiss my sores, but none to take the gifts I'll ache to give. I bend, take up clapper and close, cask and bowl, my portion of abundance in the world, and turn toward the appointed place, a hut on the edge of town, unable to imagine how I'll say the words required. This retreat is mine. I will live here always because I have chosen it. The next poem is after Elizabeth Bishop's poem called The Prodigal, which is a wonderful poem in its way. And I just sort of put new words to her music. And it's her poem, of course, responds to the biblical story of the prodigal son. I guess it's Matthew, probably. And so mine is the faithful son, the one who stayed home. The cold, unyielding silence of the house cumbered his movements and racked his breath, so that, left to himself, he'd have slept out with the cows and left them to their colloquies with ghosts. At first, he'd hoped with diligence to heal. Evenings, after the long day's chores, had sat bone-sore on a straight-backed chair, the perfect host. But they would not be moved, his presence cloyed. Still, if, after he'd cleared the evening meal and stoked the fire, he took his hat and coat, meaning to walk, his mother would avoid his eyes, the old man accuse him of a whore, when in truth he'd only wanted air. He'd hesitate a moment, then go out. Perhaps his love would never come to much in human terms. He hated scenes. The stars, the quiet fields, his animals, such he understood. From where he stood high up on Shepherd's Hill, he could see for miles his brother's tattered form, his father's tears. He breathed in the revelry and slaughter. Coarse bread of grief, beetroot, radish, turnip had filled his plate for years, his nerves worn thin. But now, once more, friends, music, laughter, dark rages, and darker still, betrayals. That would be his brother's violin. He looks up at the sky, it looks like rain. He guesses it is time that he go in. In Jewish mythology, Lilith was the first wife of Adam, expelled from the garden for her presumption in suggesting something other than the missionary position. And this is self-portrait Lilith Eve. I get to keep the cup. This is very nice. The austere angels dozing at their post, the flaming sword floats between us like a bridal veil stirred by breath or wind, utterly transparent and vulnerable to tears at slightest touch. So how explain this chronic failure of eyes, of hands to meet? Those who come after will say it was he who hulked between us like a wall of rock, dividing countries, estranging sea from land. Will say that I abandoned you to a life I would not stand, or I supplanted you in the garden with the man. Not in the slightest do we grudge them the comfort of such myths, neither can we forget what we have known, an orange presence in a circle of stones. How it seemed to leap inside us as we stroked the length of his unfurled body over and over with our tongue. How live things seemed to clench and ripple just beneath his skin. How his body was a flask full of brightness spilt with little provocation. how easily stopped his breath, how brittle his bone, how we could not tell his heartbeat from our own. Some mornings the ground was strewn with flowers torn from their stalks by wind. The world was quiet then, no, too ablaze with sound. What happened then? Nothing. And after that, nothing. There is no story here. Bending above his body, tending its delicate milkweed flower, we trembled with pleasure to hold such power over him. For me, there was no pleasure, and I was still and very much afraid. Little by little you began to leave the garden. Yes, as more and more you stayed. Nothing clean or simple about that split. And it's still ongoing, too soon to sort it out. One good eye, one breast, two hands, a single tongue between us, how we wrestle over words, strain to wring some blessing from the silence, deliverance from violence, its fear, its lure, the tyranny of names, night, day, sable and alabaster, flint, shale, still and lace. Who among us can afford to speak the language, any language, rightly, as if it weren't enough to bear one heart eternally divided in its chambers? We stand close enough to touch, we do not touch. Between us burns a sword of fire, a rusted turnstile glinting in the sun. I didn't put this on my playlist, but I'm going to read it anyway, because I like it, kind of, a little bit. As much as you're supposed to like your own poem, right? It's called Lullaby. Say to me, out there are only streets, and cars are only cars, and childhood lessons of both ways will never fail you now. I'd listen, even if you whispered, strain my ears to hear the way I silence other voices, random ones. I told you of the child, how when she slept in her crib, I could hear her crying everywhere, in noises the house made, in heat and running water, even inside the breath of early morning, my breath, the crying of this child, not even mine, and she so peacefully asleep. I can shut my lids on angels, bite my tongue, withhold my breath, swallow unbidden words before they form, but how to stop my ears? I can't resist the charm that distance holds, the silence of a street minutes before I cross into the constant flow of traffic, or sobs that I hear buried in the laughter of a girl that make me wait above my book in terror, as if she had no friends, had need of my concern. What is this love I'd heap upon the world like blankets unasked for, and by what right do I stand eavesdropping here? So that's the book, basically. I'm going to read some new poems for the rest of the reading. This is a manuscript in progress, and I guess the working title is Two Rooms. And you'll see that it's about lots of the sort of splits that we have within ourselves. The first poem is after Lisa Mueller's poem entitled After Whistler. And my title is Sedimentary Blues. There are children who should have been stones. Instead, they are put to suck at the cool dugs of water and wind, where they are broken down into sediments again, silts and clays and loams, and carefully recast in human form. Something goes wrong with the heart. When the other children enter the long summer grasses in pairs, from a distance they watch them go, but soon return to their own solitary pleasures, a passion for knowledge or things, for doing some one thing well. They are the natural scholars teachers love, that parents love to brag about, although they don't pretend to understand what God has lodged with them, mysterious mute creatures, all memory and cold fire. While young stone children are able to bear their flesh with a measure of equanimity and ease, for then they still believe in its perfecting, some intense heat or pressure brought to bear that will change the body's shale into a slate upon which time will write its crystal names. 2 rooms. 1. Here, where the soul presides, the room is bare, but for a narrow, board-hard bed, which offers no reprieve from the body's weight, nor yields an inch to its ripe contours. Here, where the soul presides, no one enters, no one leaves. There is no door, only windows breathing in the light of an attic sun. Here, where the soul presides, the body is winnowed at last into the absolute. Even desire's memory fades. Nothing troubles your sleep. All that once you feared to lose is long since given away. 2. In the other room, a woman dreams, hair tousled, breasts unbound. Little lesson in asymmetry there. The next 2 poems, the next 2 poems, I'm trying to write something like a composite or composite portrait of a certain kind of artist anyway that's, a little bit lured by austerities, I guess. And so these are a few little thumbnail sketches of artists. The first one has an epigraph which is unattributed, which I wonder what that means. So it's down the long aisle, his Clara on his arm, no bridal march, but German requiem. And it's a poem about Brahms, perhaps. A mannequin with a somewhat narrow heart sits at the piano trying the keys in antiquated locks frozen for years. A conscious classicist of abstract forms, a relic from some prehistoric age, miracle he should have a heart at all, albeit made of ice. And yet, wonder that an instrument so small should have such weight. It pulls his torso low over the keys. He tries the various keys, the black, the white. The familiar rhapsodies refuse to fly. Nothing opens. He tries and tries the keys. The next is based on a journal entry by Gerard Manley Hopkins, and he got into the austerities with himself, and because he liked the beauty of the created world, he would discipline himself to always look down. And so this is something I found in a diary entry of his, which was, "I swear I will not look at stallions." And he had been going and looking at the horses at his college campus and finding them beautiful. And it's just titled by its form, Triolet. He swore he would not look at stallions, but stallions galloped through his dreams, their flanks in sun-gashed gold, vermilion. He swore he would not look at stallions, but they were everywhere, battalions strong, crossing the quad in choir at games. He swore he would not look at stallions, but stallions galloped through his dreams. Idolatry. To their gods, the first fruits, the first unspotted lamb. To mine, each day, my hand, the left, the one I favor, launched as a voice in prayer deep into the well of nothingness. If I exist, the fingers will close round, signed and sealed with love, reality's decrees, or else I cease to be, addressed by the mass marketers, murderers, I mean. And this is the only, well, I'm going to read the only sonnet in the new poems, which is a little, I don't know, it's an unchained sonnet, let's say, and then a blank verse poem, which is also a kind of a homage to an artist's poem in an oblique way. But first, too late, my mother tells me. Those deep lines on your forehead come from frowning up and reading all the time. But for them, you still look young. Your nighttime sleep is your life and strength. You lose your best rest sleeping in the day. And anyway, if like you say there's no money in it, I wouldn't waste my time. The book I write will sell. Best thing, you come on home. The people I come from have always known books and whatnot run some people crazy, that the mind's a dangerous thing, best left alone, like blues for some, like sex, like heroin. It's a good poem to read in a library, isn't it? It's the last really long poem I'm going to read. I'm so happy. It's what blank verse does for you. It makes you feel like you can just go on and on forever with those little I ams. Yeats in love. Inside, by mid-morning, she suffers from the sulls. She can't sit still. She's underfoot or in her mother's hair or breaking things she loves. Frail emissaries sent to bear their love. Once precious things grown leaden in her hands, dumb hands that have forgotten all they've known of the gestures of cherishing. The cheap guitar, impossible to tune. Apple-cheeked dolls bought with books of green stamp saved. The music box her uncle made that played the song she'd heard her mother sing so many times it still slowed her breathing. The filaments of song, a golden rope that night after night lowered her to sleep. Now, nights, she lies wakeful in the silence of spring peepers and cricket call, turning the questions over in her mind. How will it ever come to her, her life? How find her here in the middle of nowhere where she's always been? Nothing but cows, sky, cow manure, and corn. And that other wordless question, its urgent, constant pressure pressed against the length of her so that her mind and muscles ached. She could keep her bed no more than could the adolescent Yeats. She liked to think of him, becoming conscious of desire as his body stirred against the weight of sand he'd buried himself in. Outside, drowsing in sun, sometimes she dreams of bare arms flashing through waves of corn, of trees close grown together sheltering her, of hands that trail along the smooth, moist walls of caves, the body following, blind as bats or moles, and just that much at home in corridors of dark. Or else she lies face hidden in the cool declivities of hills, a remedy that only feeds the shame she'd hoped to check. She knows herself possessed. Desire belongs to the other one who's come to live inside her for a while, the one that she will nourish, giving all that she can spare from her own life, much more than she can spare, austerity's angel, eunuch for the blessed kingdom of her art. When Yeats first met Maud Gonne, it was as if, like Venus rising from the waves, she stepped forth from his own body, more beautiful and larger than he was, more passionate. He'd given her his life, now she was free to move toward him across a crowded room, to touch her hands to his and bring to life that ancient wholeness first desire cleaves. and free to turn, redoubling the pain that time and discipline had somewhat eased. Phoenix, daughter of Leda, Amazon, my wall is loosening. O honeybees, come build in the empty house of the stair. I should confess the last two lines, and in some ways the last three are taken from Yeats, particularly, Meditation at Time of Civil War, which sort of suits the poem. The next poem is called A Brief Essay on the Economy of Friendship, and it's the most Latinate poem that I hope I will ever write. And there's a epigraph, a friend's hand is open, and that's Diogenes. He was the one you remember that lived in the urn and had the lamp through the streets of Athens looking for one just man. But I have to start over because I made too much space. A friend's hand is open, Diogenes. Meaning, between friends, there is nothing to hide. No little daggers, no salt for wounds, no pride. The fists close tight on nothing, pretending to have. Meaning, not, as most believe, the hand that gives. The cup of its beneficence is sufficient unto itself, but the one that bears its emptiness in the grace of being filled. Meaning, friendship is a commerce carried on by beggars, where having nothing each gives all he has and shamelessly receives all he is given, the poverty of each a commonwealth. Oh, we are in the home stretch. 32, 35. The thing about this is I have page numbers, but the pages aren't necessarily in numerical order. So 32 could be anywhere. Let's see, but here it is. This is a retelling of sorts, almost a torquing of the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale and the Walt Disney does. The Little Mermaid. Oh, I like Walt Disney, sorry. And this is Assimilation Blues. The moon's silver, the sun's plentiful gold, the splendor of the prince and all his world beguiled our eyes until we came to hate the things of home. The smell of brine, the weight of water light, the palace's dank walls dripping jewels, corals, embers, pearls, and cockle shells. We let our garden plots, much cherished once, run rife with weeds, forgot the haunting songs our mothers sang, our own voices dissonant in our ears, each of us alone in self-disgust, the scales, the backward tongue, the fish's tail, the way we swam among the animals, the lowest ones, soulless as they were. The old ones grieved for us, solace we spurned. There was nothing for it but to leave, and it seemed small sacrifice for us to give everything for what we'd get in turn, love and a soul. Well, live and learn. Only human. By the light of the new minted moon, you dream the fox's dream of chickens. Mornings you bask in the lizard sun, and at the end of summer leave your cast-off skin on the cast-off river stone. The owl's slow ghosting cry hushes your heart. You shriek without waking from your mouse's dream. Moon at the full, a lycanthrope you prowl. In the end, as in the beginning, the hail abandoned the halt to fang and claw. Tastes better from this cup. Anyway, the next poem that I'm going to read is going to be in the spring issue of Prairie Schooner as a part of a call and response that I wrote with my friend and brilliant poet Eleanor Woolner. And this poem comes from a lot of things. It just comes from us writing poems back and forth and taking lines from one another. But also, at the time, she had been to Greece, and she sent me back a postcard of the Lion's Gate, which is the gate that Agamemnon and his train came through when they returned to Messene after the Trojan War. And you remember he brought one of Apollo's priestesses, Cassandra, back with him along for the ride. And you will remember that she sort of tricked Apollo and got him to give her the gift of prophecy. And in return, she was supposed to lie with him, but she reneged on the deal, and the gods can't take away the gifts once they give them. But he did curse her by decreeing that no one would ever heed any of her prophecies, so she might as well have been mad. There's also a line in here that sort of samples, as they would say in hip-hop, a poem by Louise Bogan, her Cassandra, which uses the line, silly task, for what she's doing, I guess. And so this poem is based on all that. Heavens. It's called Before the Curtain. The voices have faded with the dusk, and night has come like a curtain dropped over the brave show of the day, the fading certainties of afternoon. From Eleanor Woolner's Transactions in a Field That's Overgrown. To keep from flagging at their oars as the last light drains into the sea, the men are singing as they row. No more the mighty deeds of war, but the longed-for pleasures of home. Hot baths, rich wine, soft beds, and the musk of their own women. All day you cried out from below. Quiet now, you sit and watch the waves, your silly task reprieved. The voices have faded with the dusk. Apollo's priestess, general's whore, you keep apart from the other slaves. Is it pride you feel as you watch him move among the men giving orders? And when you writhe in passion's arms, all honors, all distinctions stripped away from you, from him, do you not love the dumb and dying flesh, regret arrival, the death cry trapped in the throat, and night come like a curtain dropped? Like you, we know how the story ends, and still, like you, we turn the page, tracing the plot to its bitter end in loss and the poverty of dust. The reading, once so natural, now comes hard. We falter, question why, as we watch you walk that longest mile from chariot to palace door, where nothing, nothing can stay those hands over the brave show of the day. The hands of the clock say 4:30 when we shift in our ergonomic chairs. An hour ago, attention frayed, now self-doubt swarms like angry wasp as ambition mocks what the day has made. It's just the going of the sun that wakes the infant of the soul. Quick now, sugar, before she howls, chocolate, bourbon, scotch, against the fading certainties of afternoon. I also had writer friends writing me, feeling discouraged, and so that was what the end was about, I guess. Wow, here we are. Oh, that's right, I'm putting this one in. I think probably most of us know about the close nature of the relationship between Theo and Vincent van Gogh. What may be lesser known is that before our Vincent van Gogh, there was a first Vincent van Gogh who died in infancy, and our Vincent was able to go to the churchyard near his house and look at that stone with his name and date. And whether or not this is like this big psychological traumatic thing, we can imagine that that might be a little unsettling. And this poem refers obliquely to that. We might also remember that Theo supported Vincent pretty much primarily throughout his adult life, and that there was sort of some major tension, especially as Theo got married and began to have a family of his own. The epigraph is, "There is no end to sorrow," Vincent van Gogh. A song of brothers, a duet. And it alternates between their voices, and eventually you will know who is who, although I kind of like that the voices bleed into one another. Heavy he is, and swift the current, sweeping us further out to sea. Terrible, mysterious, this hold he has on me. Heavy he is, and slow the going. One stroke forward, waves drive us back. Sorrow sucks us down and down. My muscles fail, go slack. I have a child now on my own, of my own to carry on my back. Heavy it is to bear such cargo, 3 souls held inside one breast, one brother that sleeps in the cold churchyard, another that might as well. Heavy it is, and far the harbor, winds buffet from every side, no star lights us home. I'll cut the tow rope soon, not long, and then Theo will see it was my weakness made him strong. Brother, here I give you freedom, spend it on your son and wife. Brother, don't let go, I'm drowning. Your art gave my life life. And the final poem I'd like to read is called Is Backing Away, Is Gone. By the sweet neck scruff it had you, brimstone breath, and then the fang going in, lifted up and carried. Death then, this you thought already dead, dread turning over into glee, good the primal maw, annihilation. The beast bounds off, scenting other prey. Dropped, you lay there sweating in the leaves. A far-off death scream makes a passage in your heart. As light lightens, you watch them as they come, as if to the edge of a stream to drink. The lion and the lamb, all bloodlust done, peaceably to sleep in the heart's bright lair. Thank you.